1948, the year Osamu Dazai took his own life. Similar to the character in his book, he threw himself into a canal, specifically the Tamagawa Canal. The difference between his character and himself, however, is that Dazai succeeded. The story of No Longer Human is often called autobiographical of Osamu's life, when the truth is that it is a work of brilliant fiction. There are borrowed aspects of Dazai's life in this work, but it is mostly all made up. One of the very few things that this book and Osamu's life have in common is his suicide. This video isn't meant to be a complete summary of the entire book, but rather a collection of what I found to be the most impactful and important parts of each chapter. Viewer discretion is advised. A boy smiles at a camera while surrounded by his sisters and girl cousins. The reader imagines the boy to be hideous, for not a single human being could smile the way he did while simultaneously curling his fist in the manner the boy did. Immediately, we are met with a deep sense of isolation from humanity, as the boy is clearly not content regardless of what his face is trying to portray. Of course, in the following page we see that I was not incorrect in my deduction, as in his teenage years his artificiality is called out by the narrator. I dedicated a chapter to this because when I read this part of the book, it just ingrained itself into my head. The boy was born without the sensation of humanity. Mine has been a life of much shame. This is the opening line to Osamu's No Longer Human. In this chapter, we see the main character Yozo's recollection of a childhood where even back then he was not only depressed, but also simply not there. We can see that since birth, he has felt alienated and depressed to the point where he never even felt hunger, only eating as a front to look normal, questioning why people ate 3 times a day, coming to the conclusion that it was simply a ritual to appease some king or deity. Here we see Yozo remembering his father asking him and his siblings what they would want from his trip. When it's finally Yozo's time to ask for what he wanted, he simply freezes and is led to the choices of a lion mask or a book. And in the following impatience, his brother suggests that they just get him a book. His dad, now getting mad at Yozo, simply doesn't write anything down. Later that night, Yozo sneaks back into his father's room to write in his notepad that Yozo wanted a lion mask, even though in reality, he would much prefer the book. When Yozo's father sees his notepad, he is clearly able to tell that it was not his own handwriting and simply chalks it up to the occasion that Yozo was pretending he didn't want anything to only ask for it later, and was actually happy that he was able to get something for his son. The reality of this situation was that it was out of fear of being revealed as emotionless. Yozo often disguised himself as an imp, a characteristic that would follow him long into his life. The worst of his recollections is easily his memories of being physically assaulted by the maids and maidservants. Young Yozo didn't even register fully the extreme acts of violence and depravity that were befalling him, and simply chalked it up to natural human behavior. In this chapter, which is Notebook 2, Yozo finds a friend who goes by the name of Takeichi, who at first he was afraid of and even contemplated killing after he had noticed that he fell on purpose in a training drill to make everyone laugh. After a while, he eventually befriends Takeichi, who introduces Yozo to art, and is the one person in his life who admires his work while also expressing approval of it. Yozo soon fell into drinking after he met another friend, Horiki, who seemed to be well off and soon got him into soliciting prostitution. In this encounter, we get an interesting insight on how Yozo sees the world, as he doesn't even recognize prostitutes as humans after a while. He was then taken to a communist meeting by Horiki after he had lost all interest in prostitutes as a whole. He started going regularly to the meetings, even though he never really thought of himself as one of their comrades, and actually believes that all politics are stupid. He still continues going, however, as a way to rebel against normal society. The chapter concludes with Yozo finding a woman named Sanuko who pays for all of his drinks one night and takes him back to her house. Turns out Sanuko is very similar to him, for she is just as miserable as him. After leaving, he comes back another night to the same restaurant with Haruki and eventually goes back home with Sanuko. After they spend a night together, she invites him to a suicide pact where they would both end their own lives by throwing themselves into the Kamakura Sea. Sadly, Sanuko died while Yozo was saved, and soon disowned by his parents as he is arrested for being his father's son and barely escapes being imprisoned. At the end, he blames Takeichi for having called out his purposeful fall all that time ago. This chapter starts off with Yozo revealing that his life has gone astray as he now works as an artist only for small magazines and has even stooped as low as drawing up pornography on the side since he was expelled from his school. He is so drained of purpose and energy he doesn't even think about suicide anymore. He went to his friend Haruki's house where Haruki's mother offered him some jelly in a bowl that was watery and tasted off. At this point, Haruki doesn't really want to talk with him anymore. He then went on to say that the jelly didn't really taste bad, but at the moment it was so repulsive to him. He still ate it, however, as to blend in, of course. A girl named Shizuko ends up falling in love with Yozo, and Yozo is told by Haruki just to marry her to be socially acceptable. I must mention that Shizuko is a little girl. But soon Yozo starts insulting her and being abusive to her, even going as far as to selling her clothes. But one night, he sees Shizuko, who now calls him daddy, talking with her mother when he realizes he doesn't want to ruin her life. So he leaves. After leaving, he finds a woman by the name of Yoshiko who he only talks with when he's blackout drunk. Yoshiko just thinks of him as a funny, charming man. One night, Yozo falls into a manhole, and as Yoshiko helps him back up, she tells him that he shouldn't drink anymore and that she'll marry him if he doesn't, to where Yozo promises he won't. Sadly, the next day, Yozo gets drunk again and goes to confess to Yoshiko, who simply doesn't believe him and ends up marrying Yozo. This chapter starts off a little bit rougher than the others. In this chapter, it shows that Yozo and Yoshiko have been married for a bit and living an okay life. While Yozo is still empty inside, it's refreshing to have been living with someone who is so very different to him. However, one night, Haruki and Yozo were talking about literature and started trying to find antonyms for crime when they land on Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky, which is one of my favorite books and favorite authors. Not anything important, but just wanted to mention that because after that conversation, they start walking home. Haruki, while walking home with Yozo, tells him to look through a window, only to see Yoshiko being sexually assaulted. At that moment, Yozo doesn't even try and help Yoshiko and simply runs away to collapse somewhere, truly having lost faith in humanity. Afterwards, he chalks it up to humans being humans, similar to when he was a child, and sees that Yoshiko had bought him sleeping pills to where he takes them all at once as a suicide attempt. A friend, Flatfish, sees that Yozo is suffering and gives him some money to go to the mountains to relax. Of course, Yozo, being the way he is, takes the money for another night of drinking, only to realize as he is walking back home that he has coughed up blood into his handkerchief. Because of this, he goes to see a doctor that, very much like him, has also lost her husband recently. She ends up giving him morphine to calm his pain, unknowingly getting Yozo addicted to it. He becomes so addicted to it, he starts sleeping with the pharmacist and goes into debt. He decided to write his dad for money, and if he didn't reply, he would simply try committing suicide once again. As time passes and his father doesn't reply, he attempts once more when Flatfish and Haruki come visit out of the blue. They decide to put Yozo in an institution, specifically a sanitarium. After Yozo is taken to the sanitarium, Yoshiko gives him some clothes and a morphine injection, still believing that it was a quote-unquote energy-building medicine. And for the first time in his life, Yozo declines not only the morphine, but anything ever. In the sanitarium, Yozo says he truly feels no longer human. After a while, Yozo's brother comes to visit him saying that their father has died and that he will offer him a stay at a house near a hot spring in the coast, far away from bars, women, and drugs. Yozo's brother says he will financially support him for the rest of his life. In his stay at the house, he argues constantly with an old lady who goes as far as to change his sleeping pills to laxatives, so that when Yozo tried to kill himself again, it simply made him get up to go to the bathroom 3 times during the night. Yozo, now with gray hair, at merely the age of 27, feels like most people would confuse him for a man of 40. The prologue is fairly short, with the narrator from the beginning having come back to the bar Yozo used to live above. The narrator of the first chapter asks if the bartender knew who Yozo was when she hands him the 3 notebooks that this book consisted of, revealing that what we have read was the narrator simply publishing these notebooks that he had found. Turns out the reason the bartender even had the notebooks is that Yozo sent them to her with a no return address, and the book truly ends with the bartender blaming Yozo's father for it all. She says, quote unquote, "The Yozo we knew was so easygoing and amusing, and if only he hadn't drunk. No, even if he did drink, he was a good boy. An angel." My final thoughts on No Longer Human have to be that it is certainly a masterpiece that, while heavily disturbing, painted a picture so clear of what a life void of humanity would look like. I tried not to censor myself in this video by just saying what really happens in the key moments of this book, plainly, without using this new artificial fake language we have created to censor these words like suicide and sexual assault and rape. I felt like it would have been dishonest to not be explicit in this video, considering how important this piece of literature is. Yozo Oba's life is a sad one, but it is certainly one worth reading about, as it is the ultimate display that we truly do not know what anyone could be going through at any moment. It was my first time making an in-depth review of a book on the channel, and God knows this was a hell of a choice. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next video. God bless.